Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In today's video, we will be talking about my thoughts on the latest class, Lara, or Lala. I mean, Korean characters are the same, so it's technically Lala? Whatever. Let's get into the meat of the video. First, let's just go over the skills of Lala's kit. Her Link skill increases her damage to regular monsters, so it's good for your meals while training. The max level for her Link skill is only level 2, so if you're playing her just for the Link skill, you only need to get her to level 120. Her Legion card gives flat int, so if you need more int, there you go. Anyways, sprinkling into first job, you get the skill Spirit Sprinkle, a basic attacking skill like Evan, which you will use for the rest of your journey. Now, this skill does get an upgrade at 4th job, so it will get better once you hit 4th job. Lala also gets a flash jump and a vertical jump, which is pretty useful for mobility. Next, about the mountain skills, one is a toggleable buff that reduces damage by 50%, which is very helpful, and the other skill is a passive that has a 40% proc chance to deal damage after using Spirit Sprinkle. The final passive skill gives you 20 speed and increases the max speed by 15. It also gives you 20 jump, 20% HP, 100 defense, and 15% damage reduction. So at first job, you already get 65% damage reduction, which is pretty useful. Let's move on to second job. Here we get to use Lala's basic kit. At the very basic level, Lala has 3 elements at her disposal: water, wind, and fire. Turn on your toggleable buff Dragon Vein reading to spawn in the Dragon Veins in the map. Keep in mind that if you move away from the Dragon Veins, they will despawn. The skill Dragon Vein Eruption is the activation skill to utilize the Dragon Veins in the map. So you can only have one element active at once, meaning you can't have 2 wind veins active or like 2 fire veins active. However, you can have all 3 elements active at once. So because of this, Lala is quite RNG based, as the veins spawn with different elements every time, and their locations are also a little bit RNG. So in terms of maximizing DPS through using the veins, it's actually quite hard to pull off. The main thing I would suggest for now is just to constantly use them until you hit 3rd job. Don't worry too much about what element spawns, just use them and move on. Next, we have another toggleable buff, Mountain Seeds, that just attacks enemies near your veins in certain intervals for 10 seconds. This skill is just extra damage. Visually, it's just a little mountain seed running around the vein and attacking mobs. It's kinda cute. Moving on to 3rd job, you get access to the expression skills for each element. The water expression skill lets you travel like how Bard in League of Legends travels. It's really not that useful, to be honest, since you can just vertical jump and then flash jump. Plus, you have to set it down first and then press the up arrow key, which is just too much of a hassle. The wind expression skill gives you a buff that increases your attack speed, movement speed, and jump for a certain period of time. If you press the up arrow key while you're within the area of the skill, you can float up like Ilium for up to 4.5 seconds. Finally, we have the fire expression skill, which gives you a buff that increases your damage by 15% if you are within the area. And you will also heal for 5% of your max HP every 2 seconds. So ideally, you want to find a wind and fire element Dragon Vein that is kind of outside of your mobbing area to get the buffs first, and then move back to continue with your attack rotation. The next skill is called Slumber Awakening. This skill lets you use a nearby Dragon Vein and turns it into energy that tracks enemies and deals damage to them. It has a cooldown of 11 seconds, which can be reduced by 20% via passive hyper skills, so 8.8 seconds if my math is correct. Now, the next skill is kind of a situational type of skill, Dragon Vein's Traces. This skill lets you teleport directly to the nearest Dragon Vein available, and also does damage to nearby enemies that are near the Dragon Vein that you teleported to. If you press the skill in combination with the arrow key, the skill will prioritize a Dragon Vein in that direction. And then the rest of the 3rd job skills are just some more passive skills that give you some stats. Dragon Vein's Echo heals your HP and MP for 3%, and also gives you 5% final damage every time you consume a Dragon Vein. Right, now for 4th job. We finally get a powered up version for all of our Dragon Vein skills. Put a point into Nature Master to get a stronger version of all of your Dragon Vein skills. We also now gain access to Dragon Vein Absorption, which basically imbues your Spirit Sprinkle to deal more damage. Once again, it's quite RNG because of how the spawning works for the Dragon Veins, but just know that the water element deals the most damage. 450% damage 6 times on up to 6 enemies for the Water Dragon Vein, 195% damage 2 times on up to 6 enemies for the Wind Dragon Vein, and 5 fireballs that track enemies dealing 180% damage 6 times for the Fire Dragon Vein. The next skill, Dragon Vein Conversion, is very useful as it lets us change the element of the Dragon Vein to whatever we want. Click the skill and the corresponding arrow key to change Dragon Vein to a different element. Next, we have Best Friends, which enhances Spirit Sprinkle to deal more damage and have a wider hitbox range. Mountain Enclosure is your panic button that reduces attacks by 55%, and this also includes % HP attacks against you. You can hold the skill for up to 8 seconds, and luckily, you can use the skill every 60 seconds, and if you don't use the full duration, you get a 3.5 second reduction for every second you don't use the skill for. For example, you get a 7-second reduction if you've held it down for 6 seconds. The rest of the 4th job skills are just your standard passive skills and your Maple Warrior and Maple Will skills. The passive skill Insight is actually really good because it gives you 20% crit rate and crit damage, 30% final damage, and 40% IED. So, with 1st to 4th job out of the way, let's go over some of the hyper skills and how I would allocate them. Spirit Sprinkle, Slumber Awakening, Mountain Enclosure, Extra Shield, Dragon Vein Enhance. And depending on your gear, either Eruption/Absorption, Reinforce, or Boss Killer. If you want to make your Mountain Seeds do more damage, then you could get that instead. Switching gears over to the active hyper skills, we have Vine Coil, which is your typical bind skill. At level 160, you get the skill Free Dragon Vein, which creates a vein in front of you, and if you use an Eruption or Absorption skill on it, you can choose the element. You can have up to 3 Dragon Veins on the map, and you gain 1 stack every 10 seconds. Essentially, this skill kind of mitigates the RNG factor, because you can just plop down a Dragon Vein and then choose your element and then do whatever you want with it. At level 190, you get the skill Breathtakingly Large Tree, which summons a tree for 30 seconds. Enemies that enter the area have their defenses reduced by 15%. And if you are inside the area, then Lala actually gets 100% stance, 50% boss damage, and 10% crit damage. Also, every 2 seconds, any status effects will be cleansed. Finally, moving on to 5th job. We get some new skills that we can add to our rotation. Keep in mind that Lala is part of the common Anima class, so she will get access to those common 5th job skills as well. Starting off with Large Stretch. This skill lets you use up to 5 Dragon Veins in the map, and it also tracks down enemies. It does prioritize boss monsters and then regular mobs, and while you are casting this skill, you will have 100% stance. It's not long, but better than nothing. This skill is basically a stronger version of your 3rd job skill, Slumber Awakening, so it's marginally better, except for the cooldown. It's like 60 seconds versus like 8 seconds. Next, we have the skill Sun, River, Mountain, Wind, which is a burst skill because the multipliers are really high. Essentially, use this skill to burst down an enemy as the cooldown for this skill is 180 seconds, so 3 minutes. Moving on, Surging Spirits is a great addition to your rotation when mobbing, as the short 20-second cooldown lets you use this decently large AoE skill that does quite a bit of damage. With a multiplier of 850% for 8 lines of damage on up to 10 enemies, it's pretty useful. And finally, last but not least, we have Winding Ridges, a skill that summons your Mountain Earth Spirits to roll around the map dealing damage to nearby enemies. You will summon 3 Mountain Earth Spirits that will attack up to 60 times, all combined together. It will also prioritize boss monsters, which is pretty good. So essentially, with 5th job skills enabled, your rotation becomes something like this. First, you grab your wind and fire elemental buffs, imbue your Spirit Sprinkle with the water element, use your Eruption skill on all 3 elements, then you use your 5th job skills, probably in order of longest cooldown to shortest cooldown, and then just attack mobs with your Spirit Sprinkle, and use the 5th job skills as they come off cooldown. With this being said, I don't really consider Lala being a beginner-friendly class for players. Although Lala is technically a one-button mobbing and bossing class, similar to Adele and Kayn, the RNG of her Dragon Veins puts her in a position where her DPS fluctuates up and down, depending on where the veins spawn. While some of her skills do help mitigate some of the RNG, it's always something that Lala players are going to have to deal with, whereas Adele and Kayn players can just focus on their kit rotation. While it's nice to see Lala having some insane mobbing capabilities, sometimes it's just nice to hold down one button and relax while grinding. Lala is strong, has good mobility, and supportive skills, but micromanaging will be something that you will always have to consider. So the main question of should you play this class would probably depend on your playstyle. For some players, simple is all they want. And if that's the case, there are other classes that are better suited for them. For other players, maybe they want to play a class that has some learning to it. And in that case, sure, go ahead and play Lala. At the end of the day, it's hard to say definitively yes or no you shouldn't play this class, because playing any MMORPG always comes down to your own personal playstyle and what you like to play. However, I can always say definitively to give this class a try to see for yourself whether or not you like it. Maybe you find the micromanaging handleable, and you want to take this class past level 200. Or, if you want to only play Lala for her link skill, that's fine too. At the end of the day, MAPLESTORY never penalizes you for trying out other classes. So, you get to command the reins and choose whatever class you find is fun and enjoyable to play. So, if you enjoyed today's video, feel free to show your support in whatever way you fancy, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care.